Hey, davidtswood here, and welcome to My Extra Mile. You're going to love today's show. 4 experts in a long conversation around money, their particular habits and mindset, how they learned about money, how they implement their strategies, and how they won the money game. Enjoy. And I have 4 guests on today, and I'm going to introduce them as we get talking. You're going to hear more about their stories. There's 4 of them. What you can know about all 4 of these is they're all close friends of mine, and they all have something in common that I love, many things actually, but one of them is they love to talk about money. And Courtney, I just want to bring you in first. Let me just click on this little thing over here first. Get everyone in the picture here. Courtney, you were saying that what you find is that people are more comfortable talking about sex than they are talking about money. So let's just go there right off the bat. What is it? Why are people so hesitant? What's this thing that's going on in humanity where people are terrified to talk about money?
It's like a lot of things. It's how you're brought up, right? It's society. It's how it's viewed. And I was reading something that said, you know, as a kid, you start doing quizzes or you talk about sex or whatever, even if it's in a whisper, but you don't talk about money. And then if somebody, you know, you're talking about money or how much you earn, and you don't discuss those kinds of things. So just really, having this awareness that we have to consciously change that and encourage more discussion and asking people about it and just making it not so taboo.
Yeah, and you do that. I know you post a lot. I think you have Wealth Wednesdays or something like that, where you typically talk about money on Wednesdays. What I love, though, is I can already feel that your kids are already having a financial education right now. We just met your young son. But are you already establishing financial habits with your kids currently?
It's subtle. They're still pretty young, but I already have the jars concept I want to incorporate. And I just love sometimes seeing the entrepreneurial sort of wheels turning with my daughter. And I laughed the other day because she had the neighbor kid over and she said, let's go down to the end of the driveway and sell rocks. And he's like, okay, great. Are we going to paint them? Or, you know, like, what should we do with them? She's like, sell them. And I was like, yes. And now they're crystals, because if you smash them, they're kind of a bit shiny. So now she's selling crystals, basically. It's awesome. So just having that different ideas of ways that you can generate money, not just that you have to go get a job.
Right. And Lloyd, let's go to you. You're over there in Australia. Again, but to let everyone know, by the way, 2 things. One is, if we talk about the COVID virus, we are all at home right now during the virus, but I don't want to dwell on it, but it may come up, but really it's, thinking about what's going on in your world. If you're listening to this a year from now, because I want this to be timeless, just apply the same principles to what's ever happening in the world today. So right now we're in the COVID situation. You're over there on the Gold Coast. Lloyd, again, you said something to me earlier, but this idea with Courtney sort of bringing up that people are kind of just won't talk about money. I wonder for you, you've got a really an interesting philosophy, and I wonder about that. What is your predominant thought when people talk about a financial mindset? What is the mindset that you kind of comes up when you hear about money? What's going on in your brain?
Well, thanks, Dave, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. What comes up in my mind when people talk about money or money mindset is, one thing I've learned is that 80% of money is behavioral. And I think going the extra mile when it comes to sporting events and things like that is so normal for people to understand. They don't go the extra mile when it comes to learning about money. So for me, it started when I was young. I knew that I had to program my brain to learn about money. And the fastest way I could do that was to pick up a book. And thankfully, I picked up a Robert Kiyosaki book when I was in my teens. And I learned this thing about cash flow. And the one thing that I think of when people talk to me about learning about money is learning to give your money a job. So a lot of people don't understand the power of what money can do when you give it a job. And that is the real foundation to understanding the power of money, I think. So learning, applying the discipline and the behavior traits of delayed gratification. So putting things in place so that you don't spend now, so you save, is the very first component of understanding money. And you save better when you know where that money's going to go. So like if you can plant, my parents used, well, not my parents, but I have heard a lot of parents say, money doesn't grow on trees. I never heard that growing up, but I heard it through school. The thing is that it does. It does grow on trees. If you save, you can plant a money tree. You just have to know where to deploy that money and where to put it so it grows more money. And I think if you can take control and go the extra mile with learning about money and saving, then you can deploy it into nice assets that will produce more money. And if you can grasp that, money will always work for you, and it will never be the root of all evil. It will be the root of all and a lot of happiness in your life, I hope. So,
yeah,
that help?
all those things, root of all evil, but I want to go over to Sean. Sean, as a school teacher, or previously you're a school teacher, now you're all entrepreneurs. And I just want to make another caveat. If you're listening right now, we are doing this through Zoom. So the quality of sound may come in and out. We've got 2 people in Australia. Don't worry about the quality of the sound. Concentrate on the quality of the content. All right. So again, if this is a bit scratchy for you, then just suck it up. Okay. With that being said, Sean, previously as a school teacher, we talk about why so many people have really zero financial sort of education or financial success. I mean, most people are running month to month. You hear this thing, too much month at the end of the money, paycheck to paycheck, all this kind of thing. What do you think? Why is it that we're in such a mess normally, or most people are in such a mess financially right now, or most times, not even right now, but most people are living almost paycheck to paycheck. What's going on?
Well, I think the best way to go about this is just to build on what Courtney was sharing and what Lloyd was sharing, and because for me it's both of those things. Where do we learn about money? Well, it's not from school, and as an educator I became passionate about this topic, but it's, I was teaching science, I was teaching leadership, I was teaching all kinds of things. I was even teaching career prep. Nowhere inside the school curriculum that I've experienced was there a place for any kind of financial literacy. We're learning about money. And when I listened to what Courtney was saying, I really think about, well, how do we learn about money? Where do we get this from? And for me, if I think back, I adopted the belief system of my parents, who adopted the belief system of their parents, who were like struggling through World War II in Holland. And I think about just the money blueprint that's been passed on generation to generation, where nobody talks about money. So I only get my money conversation from what I experience. And as I was teaching, I remember teaching PE class, and any class, every day after lunch, there was this 20-minute silent reading component. And I would read a book as well. And guess what book I happened to pick up one time? Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Right. And so Lloyd just talked about that. And what was fascinating is that, I was thinking, oh, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, this is great. And as I read the story, Poor Dad was an educator. And this isn't anything about educators, right? It's just that in the context of what the book was and how to move your mindset from having that, what we learn in our school systems versus what the wealthy really think and how they get money to be created. I understood that I was in that box, that I really was struggling to be able to create any kind of financial blueprint for myself and for my family. We were just recreating what I had always learned. So, in the context of reading that book, I got to understand where I needed to go. Now, the problem was, Dave, is that everywhere I needed to go required cash flow. And what you said was there was always more month than money. Hell yeah. Like there was always more month than money. And I went to school for 6 years to become an educator, just littered with financial debt from student loans and all the rest of it. How was I going to bury myself, or how was I going to dig myself out of the debt, and then also be able to move myself? And I think that was the question that I continued to answer as time went on, and I started to change career paths in search of this elusive, money working for me as opposed to me working for money.
Wow, that's awesome. And Andrew, over to you. You're in the Sunshine Coast. Again, thanks. You know, for you, you had a path where, again, you're all successful in your own right, and you all have what I love is kind of a money situation, a sense or a pathway that's definitive around money. You kind of chose a different route in the beginning. You thought you were going to do it through more conventional business, build a company, sell a company. Talk a little bit about your journey, you know, from what you were taught and the path you were following, and how that sort of changed. What sort of changed for you?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, David. So, yeah, I guess you know, Sean was saying before, you get that financial blueprint from your parents and family and stuff like that. And so for me, it was very much you know, work hard, go to university, get good grades, you know, very that traditional thing. And so, like, I love my parents, and I certainly got work ethic from my parents, which is a brilliant skill to develop. So, but it was very much work ethic on the traditional path. And so like everyone else has said, it was then picking up a book. And for me, Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad was one of those books. And you start learning about investing and stuff. But I guess I was still on that traditional pathway of, okay, we'll create a business and then get it and put that money into property. And it was that, like, invest for capital gains, essentially, invest for the future. And we were talking with Sean before about where is some of that confusion. I think for a lot of people, there is that, like, you can't take your possessions with you. We all die with $0 at the end of the day, live in the now. And so the mindset is like, you've just got to enjoy now. And that's where I was getting confused, because I was doing all this stuff and running this business and putting money away, and my grandkids would be very grateful, but it was crushing me because I had cash, but I didn't have cash flow. And that was the difference. And that was the kind of missing jigsaw piece for me, was that I was kind of finding that pathway, and I was wandering around a little bit, and I needed to understand, how could I create more cash flow into my life? Because when you have cash flow, you have time. And I think when we talk about why are people so uncomfortable talking about money, but I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding. And I was just having this conversation with a girl this morning, that money isn't like dollars and figures in the bank account at the end of the day. Money is the ability to make choices, and money is the ability to control your time and choose what you do each day. And so that, for me, when I like finally put those couple of jigsaw pieces together, and we looked at how do we increase the cash flow in our life, because then if we have more cash flow, then we have more time. And then we know when we can spend more time with our kids, and we can travel more, and we can do these things. And we still do put stuff away, of course. Like, we still do look at the financial literacy and investment for the kids and the grandkids. And we, Coco, I was just thinking, I wrote this note before, Courtney, sorry. We put all our investment companies in our kids' names. So when we're like driving down the street and it's like, hey, Jack, do you know you own that house? Because the investment company is in his name, but it's just that little way to start the investment mindset into their heads. So that was my big revelation, David. It took me a little while, maybe a bit slower than I would have liked in hindsight, but understanding that traditional path is very much about just following the rules and staying in bounds, as you said. And I remember one book that I picked up many years ago, and it was essentially, there was a quote from Mark Twain, and it was, whenever you find yourself in the majority, it's time to pause and reflect. And that's always been one of my favorite quotes. And we know that the majority of people struggle to talk about money. We know that the majority of people struggle to have enough money to pay the bills at the end of each month. So thinking, well, if I'm following the traditional path, there's a very, very, very good chance I'm going to end up in that same situation. So if I follow a different path, I've got a much higher chance of ending up in a completely different situation. And anything was better than heading down that path in my mind.
Awesome. Courtney, I want to bring you in because your story I know so intimately, because obviously, you worked for me years ago. But one thing I noticed right away with you is because there's going to be people listening right now that maybe don't have, and we'll talk about that, cash flow. They don't have, maybe they're burdened in credit card debt. Maybe a lot of people have too much house, too much car, too much entertainment, but we see where people are spending money. But you were really, really able. You always looked amazing, right? You lived a vibrant life. but you really didn't spend much money. You had the ability to simplify. And I want to talk a little bit about simplification, because I think so many people are burdened because they feel like the only way they feel better is that car outside, when they drive past their neighbor, they're feeling something like, but that burden of that one car payment is colossal to most people's income. But talk a little bit about how you simplified. And I'd love you to share the one story about when you went to the Oscars. How did you get to go A, for free, and all your clothes and everything else, just because your mindset was so different? Again, when we take that sort of radical approach to money, well, simplification to me is always a great place to start, even if you don't have the right vehicle yet as far as creating extra income or a plan B or a side hustle, as you'd call it, lady. But just talk to me a little bit about your journey with real simple living and having everything you wanted without spending a lot of money.
Thanks, Dave. Yes. Oh my gosh. I just loved everyone's shares and I was like itching. I think that I was really lucky in that, Andrew, I was similar to you. I had to shift from being more of a hoarder to like a balance of enjoying the moment. Whereas a lot of people are trying to shift from being a spender to being a little bit more balanced, right? So luckily my mom was very frugal, and that was my learning or my experience growing up. So I was able to come from that place and just, not that she spoke about it, but watching her, I just saw how she was very frugal with things, and we never went without, but it wasn't with extravagant spending. So that's how I do things. Like my clothes, I look for them. I ask friends like, oh, are you done with that? You know, or definitely, absolutely consignment shops, thrift stores. Like then I didn't even have to come up with my own fashion sense. I just picked somebody else's, right? And then you don't have to go to 8 different stores. It's like 8 stores in one because it's from so many different people.
When you worked for me, she'd often come to work. She said, whole outfit, $12.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
$8, the whole thing. You know, she looked like really, I spent $200 on a shirt, and here she is on an $8 suit looking better.
No, that's a stretch, but yeah, so a lot of I think things that can be solved with the month and money thing and switching its places is really finding a challenge or an excitement or a joy in living more simply, or in finding those fun things that are either free or don't cost as much, right? So making it a challenge, making it a game, and deciding that, like Lloyd said earlier, picking a goal for your money so that you are excited that $50 is going into the savings for that goal. You're pumped about it versus you spending it on dinner that night, right? So it's a combination of a lot of things. But I remember, Andrew, I wouldn't even buy myself a cup of coffee. I was like, nope, that $2 can go to my retirement. And that's where I kind of had to balance things out a little. So now I buy myself coffee. It's nice. But yeah, so long story short, I was invited by a friend to the Grammys, and I thought it was a joke at first, but I thought, oh, great, what an opportunity. And really, it was an opportunity for more than just me. So I went and approached local stores like the bridal shop and asked them if they wanted to outfit me, and I would, pump them up, talk about them on the radio. And I was featured in the newspaper and on the radio, and I talked about where I got my dress from and who did my nails. And I was able to, not pay for those things, those services. And it was a win-win for everyone.
Well, it's just that different mindset about simplicity, but also you're going to the Grammys where most people would think about going out and spending the most amount of money ever because it was such a big event. You end up going in completely free attire, free shoes, free hair, free makeup, free everything, because you made it a win-win. I just think that mindset is very, very special. Look, and again, you guys jump in. If you have questions of Courtney, or if you want to jump in and add stuff, please just do. But Lloydie, you were making notes there, and I wonder, when you're listening to someone speaking, what was that note you just wrote? Because I saw you kind of move pretty fast there. What was that about?
I just think I'm just grabbing a lot of one-liners off these guys because such good content for conversation. when you're talking to social media and stuff, but it would be something like, you know, what's your best frugal tip? I want to know more about how people like Courtney create savings in their life or prevent spending. I think it's such an important skill to learn, thrift. And I know that there's probably a lot of people out there that are very thrifty, and I'd love to know more about what they do to create or save money. And it's something I'm going to be talking about more on social media. So I've got some notes here from these guys. One of the things that I actually wrote down too was from Sean. He talked about a plan A, a plan B, and then I like how he said a plan C. And I haven't heard that before. So everyone talks about, you've got to have this plan B income. And one of the things that we've been able to create, like when my wife and I, Alicia and I, were working, we had a plan A. That's everyone's plan A. You've got to work to create some sort of income. And usually it's a job. Very few people then do a plan B. And a plan B is like what you said before, Dave, a side hustle, a side income, some sort of other way of producing income, which all of us actually have as well. But then there's plan C. Made me curious. I'm like, that's really where a financial fortress is built. And so when I look back at how we built our financial independence and zero debt, it was plan A. And while we're having our plan A, we did sacrifice time in the evening and time on the weekends to build our plan B. And then we sacrificed spending the plan B money. We didn't buy the cars. We didn't buy the houses. We only have one car. We simplified our life as well during this period. And it allowed us to then create enough money to put a plan C in place, which is where we deploy our money into an asset that now produces more money. So by doing the plan B while we had a plan A and doing the plan C while we're building the plan B, it's allowed us to completely get rid of the plan A. So now we live on our plan B and our plan C. So,
yeah, and you've done a great job. Do you mind me mentioning the money you managed to put together as far as your plan C, sorry? So you've amassed $1 million.
Well, we did have up until recently. It's gone down a little bit.
Yeah. But what I love about it is you deployed it into the stock markets. All of you have different strategies. Some are more in real estate, some more in stocks. But what I love is I often reach out to you and ask what you're thinking with regards to your investments. And you know what simple is that you model great people, and your greatest model is Warren Buffett. And so you really study what he's doing and you model what he does. And I just think so often the people listening right now is like, well, where do I start? But you've all talked about the same place almost, the Robert Kiyosaki book on money, and then really modeling and following what's already working in other people's lives. Coming back to you, Sean, following on from the A, B, and C, let's go back into your life when you had the A. And what was that like for your family, your kids? You hadn't developed a plan B yet. And you hadn't, I think you planned C as far as you were still investing money, but you hadn't had a sort of a plan B as far as a secondary source of income. Talk a little bit about what was life like and why did you pursue the plan B and how hard was that?
Well, I mean, I can even, I'm excited to hear what Andrew, I know that Andrew's like keen too. Can't wait to hear what he has to say on this. But if I can take you back a little bit further, because when I went to university to become a teacher and I was playing sport, I had a scholarship, which wasn't super lucrative. I don't know if I've ever even shared this story with you, David, but my wife and I were living together at that time, and she was a graphic designer, and we were really strapped for income. So life for me looked like, when I think about Courtney and how she spends money, and we talk about frugal or thrifty, I remember it being so much out of necessity. So like in our life, I remember I'd walk down a block to the grocery store each week and I would have $20 to spend for the entire week. And some people think it's impossible, but I'd come back because I was the shopper, because I could figure out how to stretch that. Carrie Lynn would have come back with 1 or 2 items, my wife, but I came back with 4 bags of groceries, and I just had a system in place to know exactly what I wanted, what I could do, and how I could stretch that. But I swear to, not an exaggeration, we had $20 for an entire week's of grocery. And we just had to figure it out. We were living moment to moment, not even paycheck to paycheck. We were living moment to moment. And, we figured it out. We figured out how to make it work. But I remember going without, and my family's Dutch. So each week we could not buy cheese. So I grew up on cheese. And cheese on $20 would have been almost half of the whole budget. So there was no cheese in our house for like 3 years. And, you know, it got so bad that I remember even one time needing to stand in a social assistance line, you know, just to make the rent. Like it was at that point, like we were seriously struggling because, again, I had adopted my parents' blueprint and they couldn't support because of, you know, them working super hard for a pension and then not really going a whole lot, you know, really well. But what happened was, and getting to the point where Courtney was, is that, you know, spending is about choice. You know, I still think that it's really important to have balance of what things represent something that makes us feel good so that we do have a bit of that spending. So we're thrifty and frugal, or whatever word you want to attach to it. So for example, as soon as I graduated, if you come to my house, there will never be a moment that our fridge is without cheese.
Cheese!
But you know, I love cheese, but it's more about what it represents as well, because we couldn't go with it. And there are things in our lives that, you know, we'll make really clever decisions on how to make our dollar stretch. And then there's things that we really enjoy spending our money on because it feels good and it allows us to create more because of that feeling. That's how we believe the balance is, you know, being smart with it. What made us decide on a plan B was, again, just this niggle from the book that we had to get money working for us as opposed to us working for money. And I didn't know how to do that. I thought that it was logical for me to move from teaching into a sales job, you know, like in business. And I thought that was business because I didn't have an understanding. But what I did is I moved from a job to a job, you know, and then I climbed the corporate ladder and I became more of a slave to corporate growth and responsibility and increased income, increased lifestyle, all of these things, still understanding or not understanding how to get money working for me because the cash flow was never really there. And then it just became one of those moments where it was, you know, the light bulb went on and I realized that, like Andrew said, if I don't move from the masses, it's just going to go down the same, no matter how much money I end up making, it's still going to be, I'm going to be a part of the horde. So I have to do something differently. And, you know, in a time of my life where an opportunity presented itself, I understood it as an opportunity and something that was unique without cash flow, which is, you know, I understood from the book that I needed cash flow to invest in real estate, stocks, and all these different things, but I couldn't do it. So I was really frustrated. And then the opportunity to do something without cash flow, but just effort, which, you know, I'm a hard worker, so that was good to take on. It came at a time where I was like, yeah, I could carve out a little bit of time to work on my side gig where I could start creating some money working for me. And that was really the big thing for me, is I was just getting so tired of thinking that I was making a decision to move ahead, but I had made the same decision just with a little bit more money and a little bit more responsibility. I kept repeating the pattern.
That's awesome. Andrew, you know, you kind of went into physio, which again, you know, you went to school for a long time, you know, high achiever, but you know, that for a lot of people, when they even hear the word physio, they think of success and financial, you know, being wealthy. But you know, what life for you was kind of a time freedom thing, right? You were busy. And so I want to explore, because there's, even from a compliance point of view, you know, in our side hustle, you know, it's the term working income, residual income, and passive income, but to really get clear on what they are so people understand the definitions, because, you know, obviously working income, simply enough, that's what you were doing. You had a working income. Now, albeit you went to school for a number of years to get good, and I'm going to ask you, how many was it, 4 or 5 or 6 years for you to get 4 years, right? And then you move into a residual income. And I think the myth, this is what I want to dispel, is that somehow people say, oh, it's money when you sleep. It's kind of like, you know, do it once, never have to work again. I mean, that's baloney. You know, residual income means that you're going to continue to work in your residual side, your side hustle business. You're going to continue to work at it. Otherwise, it will dissolve and shrink, right? And then passive income, which is the way your money makes money, is a whole other animal. But let's just, and all of us can jump in on this one, but talk to me a little bit about your awareness from working to residual, and then deeply now as you become, you know, you're a multiple 6 or a 7-figure income earner now in your side hustle, right?
Yep.
So talk a little bit about your learnings around these definitions and why people mix them up and why people often end up quitting on their side hustle because of it.
So many great questions in there, David. And Lloyd and I only had this conversation literally last night where we're like, we love what we do, and like we just can't understand why people like want to sit around and do nothing. Like I don't understand how we do that. Right? Like I tried it once for a day and I was really bored. But it's, if you don't like what you're doing, it's stressful and it's burdensome. But if you love what you're doing, it gives you energy. But just before I jump into that, Dave, can I just circle back to what Courtney was saying there before? I wanted to jump in. I think it is such an important thing to talk about, because when we talk about wealth and money, and I love to explain it to people, it's like a bucket or a lake, and there's so much focus on how do we fill that bucket up faster. Like there's a hose, which is your job, and it's filling up, and then there's holes in the bucket, right? And there's your home loan and your car loan and your kids' school fees and your credit card bills and all that kind of stuff. And if we do ever talk about money, it's how do we put another hose in the top, or how do we get that hose in the top to pour more water in? But you can just as easily keep water in the bucket by addressing some of the things at the bottom. Now, for some people, that's a boring conversation, but it's just as effective to save $50 as to go out and work 4 hours to create that $50 into your life, right? And so
maybe
Sean,
more with taxes.
That's right.
well, yeah, like 4 hours after taxes are out. And so Sean sort of said it before, and I did take the note, like spending's about choice. Spending is about priority. And so if you don't have a financial plan, then you do just spend all your money immediately, because there's no plan with what am I going to do with this money. But spending money is about what is the priority right now. So it is something where people, when we meet people and you start having conversations, and then they're like, they sort of start hearing more of Andrew and my story, and they're like, I had no idea when I met you that like there was all this other stuff. And I'm like, exactly, because for us, just spending money on cars and stuff like that isn't a priority yet. Setting up our businesses and setting up our kids. And when that car becomes a priority, I've got the Maserati.
That's the car you want.
I know what I'm going to get. It's just not a priority for me right now. So I actually had 3 investment properties and a business before I bought a car. And it wasn't that I couldn't afford the car, because I bought the houses. They were just the priority for me at the time. So I think it is like, how do we add more, the plan B and the plan C? How do we add 2, 3, 4 more hoses into the top of the bucket?
That's a lot of discipline though, Andrew.
Yeah, if you never talk about the holes in the bucket either, they're the monkeys on the back. They're like, if water's coming out of that bucket faster than you can pour it in, that is a monkey on your back. So I just wanted to jump on that. But cycling back to your question, as you say, David, for me, as I said, like, people would look at our life and say, you are successful. Like, look what you've achieved so far. And there was almost this, it would be greedy to want more than what you have. But again, it came down to what was success to me, and what was life meant for me, and what was freedom for me. And as I said, if you follow the masses, it doesn't tend to end it well. And I've kind of changed that around a little bit to me, of like, if you follow the herd, you end up knee deep in poo, kind of thing, like at the end. So I as a physio, I had a great business. So we talk about working income. I could go in and treat patients and make money. Like that was quite simple. And if you treat 10 patients, you make this much. You treat 100 patients, you make this much. Like that was simple. But how do I increase that? How do I leverage that? And so leveraged income is kind of that one that we don't often always talk about. And so my thing was, well, I'll get a physio practice and I'll have staff. So I can treat some patients, but I can also employ staff to treat patients for me. So now it's not limited to by how many I can treat, but how many our whole practice can treat. So I could leverage out my time. And that's great, but I was still, and this was the thing for me, David, that I was still geographically located into that business. And that was for me the struggle. And so an enemy of a great life is a good life. And we had this good life. And I used to work for sporting teams. So I would get to travel with the teams. And this is how I got to meet Sean all those years ago, was I could travel to Canada with the ski team, but my wife and our family would have to stay at home. because they didn't have that freedom. And that was my kind of like, all right, how can I still travel the world? How can I still earn an income? And how can I have that choice to be anywhere with my family but still create an income? And to get from that, I had to move from working and to leverage into a more residual business structure, where we actually had a business that we could create, that we had, it's still, as you say, it's still work, it's still leveraging, it's still creating an income, and it's still putting your energy in and working. But then that business could create the cash flow, and then the cash flow could buy more investments, and then we could start adding more hoses into the bucket or more creeks into the lake, as I said. And some of them start as a very slow trickling stream that just adds a couple of drops here and there, but they grow and they compound, and that snowball effect. And then suddenly you start having these rushing rivers in. And as long as you keep that discipline not to have too many rushing rivers out the bottom of the lake, you can create that great lake that's constantly staying full. And then that allowed us to have that freedom. So that was my thing of, how do I have more time still doing what I love and still helping people? Because I loved helping people. Being a physio, I loved talking about how they could live more active lives and healthy lives, but I couldn't do that in the vehicle that I was in.
Awesome. Yeah. And Courtney, you know, and again, jump in, anyone, if you want to jump in. So, anyone?
No, I don't. I just one comment on that.
Yeah, sure, exactly.
I just very briefly, I think that the biggest mistake people make is they don't prioritize learning about and creating money. And so what Andrew is saying about, you know, he was working at this, he was putting properties in place, he was doing this. I think quite often I'll sit here on the weekend and I'll be reading a book about money or reading shareholder letters from Warren Buffett, and people are jet skiing outside. So whenever you decide to do something, you also decide not to do something. So whenever you're jet skiing on the weekend, not only is it costing money in petrol and the repayments of the jet ski, but you're actually giving up time to learn about money. So I often look at those people outside and I just know that the extra mile is what I'm doing compared to them. And that is the difference between someone that gets to learn about money and have a lot of money and someone that doesn't. So I just want to...
Well, you enjoy life. I don't want people to think that you're sitting there, you know, because you really squeeze the juice out of life as well. But what you're saying is that you apply a discipline to continue learning around money, and you're constantly expanding that. And that investment in time is where you say no to other stuff. And you're saying, hey, right? But you still, I mean, your life is a wonderful life you have, right?
Totally. But at some point, I did make a sacrifice at some point to learn about it.
Yeah.
And that's important for people to grasp. It won't just come. You have to make the time. And then obviously, yeah, you get to squeeze the juice more out of life because you've got, you know, so much money to spend. So.
Well, and Courtney, you talked about that. One of the big things, what drives you is around this freedom, you know, so some level of freedom. But what I love about your side hustle is you did it super part-time for many years. And you had a few $100s coming in, and you valued that few $100. And you can tell us what you did with it, but I'm guessing you didn't even spend it. But it was years that you were sort of really happy, and you were building yourself up to be the kind of person that could do your side hustle as a professional, and you're a professional network marketer. But, you know, you were that really, I remember when you had your first baby, you know, you were able to stay home because of this little side hustle business, but it wasn't that you were shooting for the millions. And I don't know if you thought you'd ever get there, but you understood the power of those few $100s a month. Can you talk us through your process with that?
Yes, absolutely. And I keep thinking about all these things when everyone's talking, and just these words like, it's not about the amount, right? It's about the habit or about the discipline. And so whether you're choosing to save $50 or $500 a month or $5, if you are creating that habit and putting that intention out there, then it will grow, right? And so like Lloyd said, choosing studying money versus jet skiing, he has tons of fun, but it's like he's conscious enough to even think about having a choice. And that's where I was at with my cups of coffee, right? Like people mindlessly just buy themselves $5 coffees every day. And it's not even like this awareness. So I think just that having that consciousness and that awareness, then you can at least be making that choice. And that's where I encourage people to get a pulse on your expenses so that you can still choose to, like Sean said, go and enjoy the things that you really enjoy spending money on. But then you really are enjoying it because you're like, yeah, I'm choosing this chocolate cake, not just like, whatever, not even knowing. So anyway, back to your question was, yes, I have always started with this investing and setting money aside, and I got a kick out of it. I got a thrill from it. So finding a way to make it fun for yourself by creating that goal. But yeah, I did not spend it because it's just not what it was for. I had a goal for it. And I really learned valuing any amount from things like our Millionaire Mind course, right? I am a money magnet, you know, picking up that penny when they used to exist, because it's all energy. And so having that respect and that relationship with money, that positive relationship, is huge. And so for me, the side hustle was yeah, every little extra that I got, because it wasn't really my main vein.
Well, what was great is you had
Wow.
a main income, but you
Pardon?
managed that money well. You had a simple life that was full. Again, all of you lived great lives. So even though we make it sound, because some people always think of, you know, some of what we're talking about as if they're going to lose something. But what we're saying is, if you can manage this, if you manage money differently, you actually gain so much. But you had this thing where you didn't need to spend this extra side hustle money. It could stay there because you managed the money you had already. And like you say, you had a plan, and then you turned that from how long were you super part-time, like before you started sort of really doing this as a full-time side hustle?
Oh my gosh, I'm still part-time. I mean, I don't know. I guess, are you counting in terms of hours? Like, I don't think I've ever.
So you still do it as a part-time, which is
Oh
great.
my gosh, absolutely. I got 2 littles. Yeah, it's like max. Yeah, it's max hours at my you know, when I was really working it hard was 20 hours a week.
Perfect.
So you know, and I valued that because I had my own business, traditional business, that I had to work a lot of hours. And even when I wasn't working, I was often out of town. So I was away from my family, my friends, the ability to join a soccer team or do any of those, you know, things that I also love to do. So I got that concept of trading time for dollars. And so when this side money would come in, whatever it was, if it was $60 or, you know, 100, whatnot, it was like, woo, awesome. And I often use the analogy, like, it happened to me once. I was walking down the street and I saw 3 20s on the sidewalk. And I stopped, like I looked around, like I thought it was like a setup, right? Like there was going to be a video camera, right? I picked it up. I thought, like, what should I do with this? Like, is somebody going to come and get it? I waited for a while, and then should I leave it? And I thought, well, what the heck? Like, someone's going to take it. And so I took it and donated it. But I think that kind of ties into Andrew's piece about, like, you know, always wanting more. People think, oh, don't you have enough? You know, it's like, you can choose what you do with it. Money is always in flow. Like, don't ever stop the flow. You can choose where you put the holes or the donations or what you use it for. So anyway, my point was 3 20s on the ground. Like, I almost did a cartwheel wait in the street. Like, $60, you just found that? It just dropped in your lap? Like, that's how I feel when we have a cycle. Like, $60, it's amazing. And it's like, woo, 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 happy dance. And so just like I mentioned earlier, if it's that habit of investing $5 or $60 or whatever it is, as it compounds and you can leverage that, and over time, I mean, I love the story of the penny a day doubling over time, something like that, right? Like,
days.
Yeah. So just all these concepts that people can't really understand because their emotional brain gets in the way. And yeah, I still don't spend my money that I make in my side hustle. We live solely off my husband's income, and I save it for big things. I bought my new van cash. Like, I don't buy things before I can. So that's the discipline piece coming in, like Andrew.
It was so great seeing you in the van when you come up and Courtney, you got a nice new car. You got 2 kids. But now a priority, going back to Andrew's point, was the car wasn't a priority, right? And now with 2 young children, you want a safe vehicle to drive them around. We live in the mountains, right? So then going out and investing, and again, we know cars aren't an investment, but investing that money into something that keeps your family safe, it makes absolute sense, right? And not having a car payment. Sean, over to you, as you're listening to this, because I know that this is something big on your heart, that you want people talking about money more. You'd like to teach more on money. You have a great philosophy on discipline around your income and, how you pay yourself, even though you've had some colossal months as far as income, you still live on the same amount of money. And I think that, these things in our second show, we'll maybe get into some of the how-tos deeper, and we're sort of still skirting on philosophy a little bit. But as you're listening to all this, Sean, what is the thing you want to say most to the people listening right now? Because some people are kind of wigging out because in one way they're oh, this can never happen for me. You don't understand. I'm coming from a broke family, or, I've always been broke. I'm so overwhelmed with that. People have all these stories in their head, right? But what's coming up for you, Sean, as we're sort of getting close to the end of the show?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. I know my buddy Andrew is unmuted. Do you have something that you want to speak to first, Andrew, before we? No? Good. Yeah, a lot of things. I mean, I'm like Lloyd. I mean, in my brain, I'm just, putting all these little notes in here because there's so much great stuff. Something that's really resonating for me right now is the priority piece. That's really big because I think that's super key, and I think that's something that we encompass all the time. And the other thing was what Lloyd was mentioning about really learning. I think all of us, when you look at the core, it's easy to get lost in where we are now. For me personally, where I am now versus where I was reading Rich Dad Poor Dad on a gym floor, just starting to understand the concepts and how far things have come. But, it seems like it's a mountaintop, and it is, but it wasn't jumped in a moment. It was like a lot of moments, and they were just choices for us where we took on experience by experience and little learning by little learning and investing in ourselves and, taking that time. And we did still have fun. So my wife and I, we still did, we believe in this have it all. We could have some fun, but we could also invest in ourselves. But what I notice is that the masses aren't necessarily taking that moment to redirect some of that time to learning. It doesn't take, a lot of moments to get the understanding. It's the practicing of what we learn that takes a little bit more time, but it's so worth it, because right now all of us have that choice that you're talking about. Like the choice that is the other essence of what we've all been mentioning, is that we get to choose in any moment what we're going to do with our money. And for Carrie Lynn and I, my wife and I, we've always just decided that, like our business or our plan B has become large enough to incorporate, and it will pay us personally a certain amount. And we really look at that personally. How much money do we need? We obviously have to cover off some of the holes in the bucket that we prioritized as what we want to do. But we've really understood where it was to be together as students, $20 a week on groceries, to being a school teacher based on that salary, to, we've lived a number of different ways. And we just got ourselves together and said, well, where are we really comfortable living? What level are we comfortable where we have our kids are taken care of, we're taken care of, we get to enjoy a standard of living. And obviously there's business expenses and things that happen in the corporation, but personally. And then that was our benchmark. And that's what our company would pay us as an income to live personally. And as our income grew, no matter how high it grew, we didn't give ourselves.
Just to give people an example, if you don't mind, and if you do mind, I totally understand. But just to give people an example, when we talk about the amount you chose to pay yourself for your family to live, what was that number? That was?
Yeah, it was $3,000 every 2 weeks.
So $6,000 a month is what you decided to pay yourself. Now, this is where I find this fascinating about your discipline. What was your highest income month so far in your side hustle business?
It was 65,000. And that's
65,000. That month, how much did you pay yourself?
6,000.
Right. That's what I find brilliant. That's why I wanted you all to sort of chat, because, you know, that is, to me, is like, that's so many people who get into a side hustle business because the opportunity to make a lot of money comes. What is the first thing they think about? The car, the home, the watch, right? And the discipline. But then when that side hustle business has its natural valleys or plateaus, which all of you have experienced in your business, where income's got up, it's got flat, it's got down. I mean, that's the normal cycle like we're going through right now. We're going in a down cycle, whether it's the real estate market or whether it's the housing market, right? So Sean, I want you to continue, but I just wanted people to get the numbers. Hold on, you made a high month of 65, but you still only paid yourself 6.
Well, and it kind of lends itself to that's our plan B, right? So now our plan A also is not anymore. So I was a corporate executive at the end of my working days running, you know, a large company, and the 3,000, you know, funny enough, after the government takes their share, their unfair share, you know, $3,000 every 2 weeks was around what we would take home, because the government in Canada takes about half, right? When we earn a certain amount. So that was comfortable. I was like, okay, well, let's just be here, you know, but then what's happened over time, David, is that, yeah, there has been peaks and valleys. It felt like the peak was going to go forever. But what we were comfortable with is that we weren't, you know, there was cash flow being grown. And then as the business went down, you know, sometimes the cash flow would come down, but also we chose to work on plan C's. So we were investing in business here and opportunities there, which we still are really excited about, but it takes cash flow. You know, it takes the cash flow away, and sometimes cash is king. But, you know, like even in this moment now, I'll just say that it's really had us always looking at where we're at and what our business is spending right now. Like we're in a moment where we're sound financially, but we're always exercising the opportunity to say what are frills in the moment. You know, what needs to be like taken off in terms of a business expenditure? What needs to be looked at as a personal expenditure? You know, what things now, we're always in that moment where it's like, it's a bit of a dance, but we always want it to be obviously in a growing position. But, you know, it's just been that choice. We've always modeled that. We've always modeled the fact that we pay ourselves first. So we're taking money that we pay ourselves. This is probably a whole other conversation, but, you know, having the income that we pay ourselves, we still take a percentage and put it in a financial freedom account, you know, and we continue to grow that piece. So there's lots of moving parts to it, but we've just always maintained it. And when we chose,
when excuse my terminology, but when the shit hit the fan and your business did go down, which is again inevitable if you understand cycles, it's gonna, you know, the natural ebb and flow of life. You weren't in the situation where other people were. You weren't in this panic. Obviously, there's some fear, but because of the plan that you had and the discipline, and obviously, again, looking at your life, if someone went through your Instagram or Facebook, they're going to see you traveling all over the world with your kids, you know, living on beautiful lakes. I mean, it's not like if we look at any one of you and analyze your life, we're going to see people who are extraordinarily loving life and loving their families and have this discipline, right? So, but I want to ask you all a quick question because my sense is I was going to do 2 shorter shows, but my sense is because where we're at, I think maybe, should we just keep going or should we end this one and restart? It feels like we should just keep going. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think we can. Can I just say one thing if we're going to keep going? I think
yes.
because here's the thing. It would have been easy for us, because things were good, to just spend a little bit more. And even if I was to say, like, if we were to, now, since we moved houses to a house on the lake, so we did increase our expenditures to $4,500, you know, as an example. In recent times, just being transparent, we've dropped ourselves down to $3,500 because I want to make sure that the corporation is good, right? So we choose to take some personal frills away. But my point would be is that if I just increased how much our company paid us with the cash flow we had from our business, even by 20 or 20%, right? We would be in some desperate trouble right now. Like desperate. I really believe that. Like it would just be paying, like just being a little frivolous by 20%. And like it's a concern, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful right now that we didn't put ourselves in that position, because there are a lot of conversations about things that we wanted to do. And like Courtney, I don't like to go into debt for anything. So anything we want to do, I like to have the cash and then just pay for it. But still, we've had little nest eggs of cash to do a project, and there was something intuitively that we didn't do the project. Now we're sitting with a bit of that plan D cash just in case, because we don't know what the landscape's going to look like in the next 6 months to a year. You know, so there's just those moments that I'm just so grateful that we held back, you know, and we employed that discipline or that plan that Andrew was talking about.
That's interesting time, because I mean, the last time the recession hit, Sean, you were buying townhouses down in Phoenix because it was the best opportunity in a recession. Is a great time to invest. And what a great time to buy homes is when, you know, the real estate market had gone to its natural bottom, which is now it's sort of back up again. But this time, you know, I found even myself, I haven't deployed any investments over the last few weeks, which I normally would, because it's just like, hey, there's a lot of uncertainty because of this virus and people being at home, so we don't know really what's happening. I think a lot of opportunities will come. Now, the sun is setting, so you're going to see me get very bright in a moment here. So if you're watching, you see how light I am. That's because the sun's setting right in front of me. Lloyd, we're going to keep going then. Anyone want to jump in on anything that you've heard so far and you want to add to it, Andrew?
Yes, Dave, I think you said it just before of like for a new listener or someone coming in, like your head might be exploding a little bit at the moment. And I think two of the main points to really take away from this first half, at least of the show, was from Lloyd and Courtney, where like Courtney, you said that beautiful line, it's not the amount, it's the habit you create. And that's what we see. And then we've sort of talked about it just before with like Sean and David, where when people come into money, and we see it with lotto winners, you see it with your athletes and that, they come into money and then they've lost it 3 years later, and the lotto winners and they've lost it. And because when we start to earn that extra income and we start to invest and we start to do these things, it's about creating that habit. And it's so much easier to create the habit at $100 a week than at $10,000 a week. And that's where it's so, so important. And mindset, like Lloyd sort of talked about it, we've all talked about reprogramming our minds through books, through hanging around great people. And it takes time. It's not like we read one book and the whole landscape was just laid out in front of us. It was a step-by-step process. But if your mindset and habits are on track, then success is almost inevitable. Like if you understand someone's mindset and you understand their habits, you can get a fairly good prediction of where they're going to end up. And that is free. Like at the moment, it doesn't cost you anything to change your habits. And it's a bit harder to get to a library right now, but in our world, it's so easy to go down to the library and for free get millions of dollars worth of financial education in amazing books for free into your head. It's just a matter of having that discipline. And the thing I've always said with Lottie, and you know, especially for parents, I know for parents sometimes they can be like, oh, you know, with the kids and all that kind of stuff. And we're always going to have to say no. So for us, Lloydie and I are kind of the same age. It was that when all our friends were partying, we were still reading books. And I still when I did go out, I made up for it. Made up for lost time, and I just didn't do it every weekend. Right? I crammed it all into one night, sort of stuff. But it was that like you're going to say no to something now, so that I don't have to say no in the future. And that was always my big driver, that now that we have the kids and we can go on these beautiful holidays around the world and have the white Christmases and that, and you're not saying no to the kids then. And it's like, do you want to do this? Yeah. Do you want to do this? Yeah. And I don't have to say no. So if you're not wanting to say no in the early stages, not wanting to make that sacrifice, it does unfortunately mean that you're going to have to say, no, I can't watch your football game. No, I can't come to your dance recital. No, we can't do this because we don't have the money. Whereas if you're willing to make some of those sacrifices, create that habit, change your mindset early, and just say no to a jet ski or say no to a few Sunday nights out, stuff like that, and create those habits, then you can go out and say to the kids, you know, order whatever you want. And Lloyd and I, again, we were only just chatting about this the other day. Angie and I had a great week in our business once, and we took the kids out and we're like, guys, anything you want. Like, mum and dad are celebrating. And they ordered an ice cream. I was like, $2.30 later. Like, this, okay. It was fantastic. We were kind of like, let's celebrate. And then it was actually our kids that brought us back to ground. And our kids that brought us back of like, no, you've had a great week, but just celebrate and have some time together. And we shared an ice cream on the beach. And then we went back and put the money aside and into our financial plan.
I'm going to ask Oshi whether that story is true or whether she asked for a brand new electric Barbie car or whatever it might have been at her age.
I'll bring her in. You can interview.
I love that, Andrew. As you were saying it though, I was thinking, I don't know if you guys can relate, but I didn't ever feel like I was missing out or having to say no, because I was really actually excited about what I was putting the money towards or saving it for or creating it, or, like that excited me. So it didn't really feel like a missing out. So finding that why or that goal or something that excites you about being able to say, oh, I'm not going to come tonight because I'm actually working on this and I'm pumped.
Yeah. Lloyd, it would be sort of, again, we're going to continue on. I really think, I just feel the flow. And I think a lot of people, if you find that you need a break, and just, go and do a break and then come back and listen to the end of this. But, Lloyd, as you look at the options for most people, if they have a job, and we look at, the prediction is 800 million jobs are going to be gone in the years to come, because of automation alone. And we're seeing that. We're seeing, the whole idea of security in a job probably isn't there. And at this time, people who thought they would never be unemployed are suddenly unemployed. So we are seeing this. But, when I asked you earlier, I said, what's something you really want to talk about? You mentioned a plan B. And I just want to sort of explore that, and let's get maybe a little bit more specific. If someone starting today, and all of you can jump in on this one. So most people have debt. Most people have credit card debt. Most people have a car payment. Most people are in too much house, or they don't understand that a house necessarily isn't an investment. It can be a drain because you have to fix everything. So depending on how you buy a house, but just so let's start. So someone there, okay, I want to start. I want to have the freedom that you're all talking about. And I haven't been very good financially, but starting today, what are some of the things, everyone jump in with this, what's some of the things we can start doing immediately, including if we want to build a side hustle, and what does that look like? Let's all talk about it.
I'll just jump in quickly then. So the very first thing that they need to probably look at, or they would choose to look at, would be changing their money story. So if they've had a story up to that point, actively saying, okay, as of today, I'm changing my story. And that begins with me reprogramming my mind. So it would be the beginning of, how do I educate myself first? So what books am I going to get? And I would encourage them to start with 2 specific books that I started with. Actually, it was a school teacher that recommended them to me. So I can't say that school didn't teach me about money, but go school teacher. So he said, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And he said, read The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason. And those 2 books will start beginning to change your money story and your money education. And they're the 2 most important books, I think, to read at any age to kick it off. The second thing that I would look at would be, there are 3 things I'm looking at. The first one is reprogramming and changing your money story with those books. The second thing would be
just the reprogramming part. You can all jump in on this one, and I'm going to give you time to finish what you're thinking there. But the reprogramming, for me, it took a long time. It wasn't like, I spent years and years and years being someone who didn't have money. And, and I realized that even today, I can catch my old self wanting to go do something extravagant financially. And I'm saying, well, this isn't part of my financial plan, right? But really, that reprogram was the consistency aspect and focusing on, I had to focus on it every single day and really reprogram, especially growing up in a broke household where everyone was broke. I didn't have any kind of financial, understanding whatsoever. But just the idea that reprogramming part may be something you do over years, but it doesn't have to be hard. It can be fun, right?
Well, I think, yeah, absolutely. I think what I wanted to do was I had a real natural curiosity around it. Like I was like, gee, I'm interested to learn how I don't have to work I don't know about you guys. I hate working in stuff that I hate. So I was like, I need to figure out money so it can work for me. And I knew it could happen, especially after I read those 2 books. So then it was almost like it kicked off this curiosity journey for me. So you're 100% obviously right there. It is ongoing. And I still battle with it today. I'm like, do we go and buy a Range Rover now or do we wait? Like at some point we have to reward ourselves for the work we do, but we still go through those moments of, is this part of the plan? And there's a lot of thought around that forever. And I think that people make a mistake. I hear it all the time. They're like, I want to create financial freedom so I don't have to look at the menu anymore. I'm like, you probably have to keep looking at the menu for quite some time, even when you have the money. So there's that inconvenient truth about wealth they need to contend with. But you can definitely spend, but just be conscious. So when you're going through the reprogramming step 1, understand what Dave said. It's definitely ongoing. I still do it. I think it's important. And then the second thing is what Sean spoke about, like getting rid of the frills or going through your subscriptions, going through do you need 2 cars? Going through, do you need this? Putting it all on paper and saying, what do we need and what is just there and what we've forgotten about and what we don't need. And so step number 2 is really understanding how can I protect my cash flow so I can start saving. And the step number 2 of saving is such an important part of it because you can't even start a side hustle unless you have saved somewhat of maybe $1,000 at least. So that journey to $1,000 is where I'd go with step number 2 because it's going to allow you to then do step number 3, which is to create your side income, this second stream into the bucket that Andrew spoke about. So fix the holes in the bucket, then find a second stream into the bucket. And how you do that is, I think it would be prudent for anyone to actually look at an online type of side hustle, because I think it's very obvious to see now that the only people growing their wealth at the present time who've protected it, it's not landlords from property. Landlords are getting tenants that can't even pay their rent. It's not owners of stocks in banks either. Like some of our dividend income is up for question right now. It's actually Jeff Bezos. He is now he's definitely the wealthiest guy in the world, but his Amazon business has gone through the roof. And if you look at all of our businesses here, we all have an online side hustle and our businesses are all up. So I think you would be crazy not to look at a side hustle that was online based, that happened to also be food based, because if you look at the supermarkets, they're also one of the very few businesses that have stood the test of time through this crazy environment. So start a side hustle, but look at it online and look at it at a recurring or consumable product. And I think if you do that, be prepared to build that over a 4-year career. So put 4 to 5 years into it, and then be aware that when the cash is coming in, be prudent with the habits you've created over the time and do what Sean has done and pay yourself a wage out of that. And then you're going to have cash left over for a plan C and a plan D. But that's how I would approach it if you start now. Yeah.
Drop the mic. I'm just going to leave it open for anyone else. Jump in. Sean, you want to jump in, or Andrew? Or?
Yeah, I think Lloydie obviously crushed it, right, David? And it all starts with mindset. And for me, I guess the slight different, I would say, you got to start with the mindset. You got to read the books. You got to find the mentor. You've got to do a thing, and that really comes back to what is your goal. Like, people constantly come up to me, I want to start investing, and I'm like, why? Why do you actually want to start investing? Because there's so many, we have this. There's so many investments out there. People don't even know where to start. We have this gluttony of choice right now in investing and online businesses and side hustles. So the first thing we have to do is, for me, is like, what is actually your goal? What do you want? And I think traditionally, again, when we traditionally talk about investment, it's like, well, buy a property so that in 50 years later you can sell it, or buy some stocks so that in 50 years later you can sell them to the kids. And that was kind of the traditional investment mindset that we all grew up with. Now it's very different. So what is your goal? And then Lloydie sort of said it there as well, as what are your expectations on yourself to match that goal? Because I know I went to university, so I had to study for 12 years at school, but particularly the last couple, to get the best possible grades, to get into one of the, the hardest courses to get into, study for 4 years, and then work my butt off to earn 6 figures. And I was comfortable to do that. So then when I started like our online side hustle, I just had this mindset of, well, it's going to take me 5 or 6 years to earn 6 figures. That was my expectation at the start. And we were able to achieve it significantly faster than that. But now, like, people have the opposite mindset, where that's microwave food and credit card, buy everything immediately. People will come in with, I want to have a goal of an online business, but my expectations are that I don't do that much work, or I don't show up, or I don't put that much money into it, or I don't read the books, or whatever that is, and I'm going to make $1,000 next week. So if we want to get started, we've got to make sure that our goals are there and our expectations on ourselves are going to match the goal. Then we find the vehicle that works for us. And then when you have the goal and the mindset, the mentor, the vehicle, then you've just got to get to work, and then you just got to repeat. The other thing I'd add that we like right at the moment, I think this is like the biggest thing people are understanding is that when people say, oh, but isn't starting a business risky? Isn't getting into this risky? Isn't buying a property risky? There is risk in everything. There is risk in driving down the street. There is risk in getting on a plane. There is risk in getting on a cruise ship these days. So there's always going to be risk. And for me, it was like, well, being solely reliant on one plan is risky, because we know that doormat can get pulled out from under your feet very quickly, and it's not an enjoyable topic to talk about. It's incredibly sad, and it's a huge struggle for people. But they're finding out now that you can't rely on your job every single day. So we've got to understand that there is risk to everything, and don't be reckless. Like if you want to be reckless, David and I go bungee jumping or jump in jet boats when we feel like being reckless. Don't be reckless with your money, but understand that there is always going to be risk, and you might risk time, you might risk, whatever it is, like time jet skiing or whatever it is. But if you could pour that into an investment and create a little safety net and a plan B and a plan C, then you actually have a very low risk life, because you have multiple options and you're not purely reliant on that one hose to fill your bucket.
Yeah, great analogy. Sean or Courtney?
Yeah, I was just gonna, I think those are great. And there's not a lot to add for me in terms of the space of what to do. But the one thing I think that Andrew said earlier in the call that really resonated is that, when I was working corporate, I didn't want to have a side hustle that felt like work, that I felt obligated to do. And the thing is that he has fun doing what he does. Like, it fills his cup. It's a purposeful activity. We get fulfillment out of it. And I think that's what I was looking for. So when I saw an opportunity that, again, I moved into and I tried on, I realized that it really ticked a lot of the boxes outside of just money. Yes, it created a side hustle, a residual income, but it ticked a personal fulfillment box as well. So I resonated with the opportunity on every level to the fiber of my being, so that when I think of this right now and the residual of it, I'm not worried about today, because I know that I'm going to do it until I take my last breath on earth, because I feel great in doing it. And so I just feel really good about that. So when people are looking for side hustles or a side business or an online business, like, really do something that resonates with who you are. I like, for all of us, yeah, we're in the nutrition space, we're in the online space. It makes complete sense because it's consumable. There's so many great things about it. I know for a fact, for me personally, if somebody gave me an opportunity to sell cell phones or cell phone plans, or, any of the, makeup, there's lots of great things to do. I just couldn't do it because it's not who it just doesn't resonate with me. But some other people who are incredibly passionate about those things would hit it out of the park. So I think for us, it's just, I would just say, really figure out who you are, so always working on yourself and becoming aware of who you are and what you really want to do in the world, and then what opportunity aligns with that, so that you never feel like you have to work a day in your life. Because we can spend all these hours, even the time we're spending together is like, it's so much fun because we're passionate about it. So it doesn't feel like we're spending any time doing any kind of work. And that would be the one thing that, I wasn't born into doing this type of work, but it became a part of me because I love it so much. And
to be sort of clear though, you've worked really hard, but it doesn't feel like work. So that's the sort of thing. So yes, there's still a lot of work involved, but when you're doing what you love and you look at the community we have, I mean, we're all close friends, it's just like, and we have friends around the world because of our side hustle, not necessarily because of the life, we're leading. We never met each other, Courtney, what's your thoughts on this? You want to add to some of this as far as, that new person starting out, where to start?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially people that are maybe feeling like we mentioned earlier, like I'm in debt, or I don't make any more money than I spend, or, things like that. Some of the places that you can start is to discover and to learn where you are at, because most people don't have a clue where their money goes. So just like you'll hear them saying, keep a food journal for a month so that you know what you're eating and where these calories are coming from. And then it's the general simple math, right? Like you have to spend less than what you make to end up with something. So really knowing what you spend your money on. And it doesn't mean you have to like have this hardcore boring budget for the rest of your life. Like you can do it for a month or two and then have this awareness like, oh, didn't realize this column was so hefty, and I'm okay with it because it brings me so much joy. Or, hey, I don't get a lot from this. I could make my coffee at home, and so I'm going to choose to save this $200 a month that I'm currently spending, and I'm going to redirect it on this goal that I'm excited about. So find something that excites you about money so that you can be curious and start reading and learning and working on that mindset, but know where you're at. And then like Sean said earlier, pay yourself first, because again, it's not about the amount. It's like the lotto winner, right? Like if you start the month with 6,000, you'll end with zero. If you start it with 2,000, you'll end with zero. If you start it with 20,000, you'll end with zero if you don't have any consciousness around it. So creating that awareness, knowing where it's going, and then making a choice about where it's going. Pay yourself first so that you put whatever, $5, $100, $500 into that investment. It comes out, you never see it, you never are going to know the difference, you're never going to miss it. It's done. It's not even, it doesn't even have to be conscious anymore. It's like one auto setup on your screen, and now you're saving money.
It's funny, I've coached clients with that where, they have this massive car payment, not even massive, but a car payment, and they were wondering how they can save money. And I said, well, why don't you just go and buy a little runaround car, and you're already used to spending that $460 a month on your car. Just make that payment into yourself. I mean, that's just an easy way to look at it, right? I just want to clear up the whole financial freedom thing, because this is another one where if we had our compliance team on here right now, there's two things that they really want clarity on is what financial freedom is. People talk about, be financially free. Well, guess what? There's a lot of people who we know make $100,000 a month who aren't financially free because they're spending $100,000 a month. But there are people who are listening who are kind of, quite used to living off $1,200 or $2,000 a month, who can actually become financially free relatively quickly because their expenses are so low. So just the idea, the definition of financial freedom, I'll use mine, you guys jump in, is when, our passive income streams exceed our expenses on a consistent basis, then we can have financial freedom. So if I had a passive income vehicle, and I'm not talking about side hustle, I'm not talking about network marketing, that's a residual income where I keep working. But if I have passive income where my money's making money, so my money's invested in something, like for Sean, it's property, for Courtney, it's property, for Lloyd, you're in the markets, Andrew, you're a combination. So we all have different places that we create our incomes from. But when that exceeds our expenses, so when we were able to reduce expenses and then create a passive income and live simply, financial freedom is relatively is much easier than most people think. Most people have this delusion that financial freedom comes if you can make $1 million a year. Well, do you guys want to jump in on that one and just talk about it?
I think there's a big difference between financial independence and financial freedom. So I think what people say when they say financial freedom is they want financial independence, which means their finances are independent of them having to go to a job. And because freedom to them is like, I don't want to go and work, commute, and then work under circumstances where I have to ask for annual leave every year. So I think for us, it was all about creating financial independence where our money was dictated by us and our actions and not by anyone else almost. And then financial freedom would be for me having so much passive income coming in that you're almost struggling to spend it. Like, you know, you've got the Lambos, you've got the planes, and you're just like, I cannot give this away. And so then you start to move from a position of, I'm done with accumulating things, it's not creating happiness for me, I need to give this back. And so you move to philanthropy and contribution. So for me personally, that would be financial freedom, where I could just like give it away, it's just coming in so much. They're the two sort of ways I look at it, I think.
Yeah, I think freedom's such a subjective word, isn't it? So what is freedom for me? You know, living in the Sunshine Coast with a wife and 2 kids is very different to the next person. And Lloydie, with, you know, on the Gold Coast with Alicia and his wife and no kids, even just polar opposite. Yeah, like, hindsight. You know, what a great decision. But it is that subjective decision, and so it is a subjective word. Sorry. So it is. As sort of similar to Lloyd, it's about financial security first. And for me, it is that, like, if you know that you lost your primary source of income right today or tomorrow, and you lost your job, but you could still pay your bills and you could still maintain your costs of living through your passive investments, you have financial security. And from there, then everything else is a kind of bonus. Everything is the cherry on top. And if financial freedom is 2 6-month holidays a year, then you're going to have to create a fair amount of extra income to do that. But if your costs of living, you can last that month, if you lost your month's paycheck, then you're financially secure. And for most people in the world, that just getting that monkey off your back is enormous. And the change in your energy and the change in your happiness, the stress that is taken out of your life by knowing that, like, you're not dependent on that job to pay the bills, that something else is going to be there month in, month out to cover the bills for you. So that's like our sort of primary freedom goal, essentially, as you say, is that our first goal was to kind of create this online business and create this side hustle so that Angie could stay at home and have more time to raise our kids. And then it grew and developed so that I could spend more time. But then again, we stayed disciplined with that. Okay, well, now we've got to grow the passive investments. And if the passive investments can pay for our costs of living, then everything our business makes is essentially a bonus. Everything that the business makes can go into our kind of freedom account. And if that's beautiful holidays, traveling the world, having a New Year's with you, or, you know, taking the kids around Europe, or even just as simple as going into the cafe with the kids and they can't choose between the cookie or the biscuit, and you just buy both because you're like, I don't have time to wait for you to decide. So just the simplest things like that. But we know that our investments will pay for our home loan and our car loan and our basic costs of living. Then to us, everything gets us towards freedom in our version of freedom.
So before I let Sean and Courtney jump in, I just want to talk about you for one more second. Is that you went to school, became a physio, you went through and built a very, very good practice, then started a side hustle primarily for your wife, managed to get her home, and then realized that you could actually get home as well, and now created a multiple 6-figure a year side hustle business. But what you did was you now go back to work because you want to, because you love being a physio. So you pop in and you work 1 day a week, which is getting you to meet new people. But I just love this whole circle. But because this was a passion, you get to still play in your passion, but you could, in fact, I think you said to me, you wouldn't even care if they paid you. You'd probably go and do it for free, right?
Maybe not free. No. But no, it is something, as you said, like where I started physio because I genuinely loved helping people get back into active lives. And I did genuinely love that. And in my early few years, I was just loving it. And I was working with teams and then again, life priorities change. And I met Angie and we started a family and that. And then so the priorities changed there to an extent where now, as much as I loved physio, I loved being at home with my kids more. And so we had to find a way to do that. And so now, as you said, it's really nice to go back in. And because we've, our financial security and our level of financial freedom has allowed us to move to a completely different town and buy a new house and all those sorts of things, we don't know anyone in this town. And so it would be very easy. I think this is when we're talking, circling back to when we're talking about habits, it would be very easy to just sit at home and say, you know what, we worked hard, let's enjoy the fruits of our labor. But what am I teaching our children in that regard? Like, what am I teaching our kids is they're gonna have money, but are they learning work ethic, and are they learning habits, and are they learning chasing your passion and getting excited about something and doing what you love? So yeah, I still want to create these habits, and I want to create these great mindsets in our kids. But one thing I can do is go to work as physio, because I had that burnout there for a while. And I don't know if anyone else in your job, in your industry, in your business, you understand this, that it goes from going to work because you love what you've decided to study or love what you decided to do, or going to work because you have to, and you lose the passion. And I know, and I remember having these light bulb moments where I'd be in there treating a patient, and they're telling me, patients will tell you their whole life story, you know, and they're coming to you for emotional support as much as physical treatment and therapy. And they're telling you this whole story about their husband, or, you know, their kids or something, and you're 1,000 miles away because you're thinking, oh, my next patient's cancelled, and that means we're not going to cover the bills this week. And, you know, why did that that therapist say that to that patient? And my two reception staff are arguing. And I am so far into trying to run a business that I've forgotten about the person in the room with me who's struggling. And I know that that's a skill that I'm very good at, that I've developed over years of doing that. And so that's my, like, giving back. Really, that is my, I can go out and, you know, I have said to them, pay me what you want, like, just pay me something, maybe worth leaving the house. But essentially, there was no negotiation on wage or anything like that. There was no negotiation on hours. It was like, I'm going to come in one day a week and just treat people, help you guys out, give back, meet people in the community, make new friends, and that. And just as a side note, it's probably good for the relationship that Angie and I have a day apart. You know, you can have too much time with your husband and wife sometimes, and we have that day apart. So there's all so many great benefits of it. But again, it's great to just leave at the end of the day and know that I've been 100% present with the patients, and leave and not worry about whether I treated enough patients to pay the bills, or did I treat enough patients to make sure the business could cover its costs, or did I treat enough patients to make sure we can pay the car loan this week? It was, you know what, I walked in and I gave those people what they needed, and I gave them 100% attention because I was right there at that time. And then I can completely switch off and come home and be 100% present with my kids. And I've kind of recharged myself and filled my cup, and then I get to be the dad that I've always wanted to be.
Awesome. Sean?
Yeah, it was just, that's great. I don't think I have anything to add in terms of, you know, what financial independence means or freedom. But I would offer a game to anybody who's listening, and knowing that sometimes, well, the financial independence or financial freedom, whatever terminology or how that exists for you means, it's going to be different. I know that when I was a teacher, financial independence would have meant, and what I could envision for my life of what I wanted would be different than it is today. Because I've done a lot of work and I've done a lot of growing, and, you know, I've experienced a lot of things. As our income has come up, you know, our dreams have become bigger, if that makes a lot of sense. But one game that we like to play is that we play what our money number would be, you know, for us to live the life that we want to live, with all of the frills that we want to have in our life, for all of the contribution that we want to give in this world, for everything, you know, helping parents out, helping other family, like everything that we want to do. What would our number be right now? What is our magic number that we have to create so that we can live that way? That far exceeds the bills, but we could even do it, you know, if my reality is, you know, a Canadian average salary and an Aussie average salary of around, we're fairly similar, $35,000, $40,000 a year. You know, that might be, you know, a $60,000 mark, but how would you spend it? So like, if it's going to be a $4,000 a month, spend it. You know, if you're currently making $2,400 and your goal is to make $4,000, what does that look like? Where would you spend it? Like, really write it all down, and then continue to play the game as that reality increases. You know, so for us, we just continue to play it, knowing that when we spend it, we really understand it as well. We can get more excited about it because we can see it happening. But it's a lot different today than it was, say, when I was teaching, and then when I was working as a pet food salesperson. And then, like as it goes, because we didn't know what we were capable of. And sometimes when I was stuck in the muck, I didn't have the capacity to dream big enough because I was stuck in where I was, but I could dream enough to go beyond where I currently was playing that game. And even now we know, like, we're continuing to grow. We haven't learned everything we need to learn. We still have so much to go through that our dreams right now, I'm sure, will pale in comparison to where they'll be in 10 years. Right. But we just got to continue to play that game. And I think it's a game that any of us can play at any level. It's just, don't just throw a number out there of where you think it is. Throw the number out and then break it down as to how that would look in your life. Where would you spend that money? And what we found a lot of times is that abundance wasn't enough to do all of the things we wanted to do, the contribution. So we had to bump it up a little bit, but then it became a real sweet spot. And it was something that we built, we continue to build off of. So that would be the one thing that I would just add.
I love it. It's really
fun.
And Claire, you want to jump in on this one? Or?
Yeah, that's awesome. I really like that game, and I think it would tie in well with like the reality of having that, like Lloyd said, financial independence versus freedom. I mean, like, that's kind of just the freedom is passive, exceeds your expenses, right? Like, but that financial independence and like playing that game, like Sean said, or really having that awareness and asking yourself, is that something I really want? Because like Andrew mentioned before, like we grow up with these ideas, or this is the investment vehicle, right? Like, but that's what it used to be, right? Like, things change. And so when you think about financial freedom is like, oh, I want a yacht and a helicopter and this and that and the other thing, like, is that what you really want? Or did you just read that in a magazine? Or is that what, like, you think means you're successful or whatever, right? So having like that level of consciousness to then actually ask yourself that question again. And I remember thinking when I would drive out to where Dave and I worked together, it was about a 15-20 minute drive, and I would be driving behind trucks and campers on the highway, and I would look at them and I would think, camping on a Wednesday, that's when I'll know I've made it. And it wasn't like extravagant, but it was that time freedom. It was that choice. And that's what it is for me. And I remember asking someone, what would it look like for you? And they actually answered differently than most people. And it was like, oh, just like, I just want to go out and play soccer in the backyard with my kids. Like, that would be awesome, just to do that like anytime kind of thing, right? And it was so refreshing because it was like he'd actually thought of what it would be like in real life versus just like, oh, I could buy something shiny, right? So I think the reality of it versus what we kind of just imagine, because it's so far out there, is, like Lloyd said, that difference between the freedom and the independence. And just kind of really asking yourself what would make you feel great. And maybe it's just having enough wiggle room to be able to go part-time with your job or whatever it is, right? So just being like real with yourself and then getting excited about that and taking the little steps and educating yourself.
Yeah, that's funny, like as we progress, the vision of, that freedom or how it looks is vastly different. I was looking at some photographs of me not many years ago. I'm out with my chickens, and my cowboy boots. I had my little farm, and that was it. And now, what I see for freedom for myself is so different. But for me, that was freedom. I was living on a lake, and I thought I was completely free. I didn't have a lot of money, but I had the lifestyle. And I think that something that I want to talk about is, how do we, and we're going to end this call soon, but I want to sort of ask if we can reconvene this group. I wouldn't mind reconvening, doing a few shows and really sort of getting into some of these pockets of money and mindset, and then also the vehicle itself, how to create a proper side hustle, the strategies you've used, the success you've created, the things you've learned, the challenges you've overcome. But, as we sort of look towards the end of the show here, I just want to sort of, think about sort of the work ethic that we talk about, because if somebody truly wants to have a side hustle, most people come into it and they dabble, or they're afraid of what other people think. You guys are all professional network marketers. There can often be a stigma attached to that. People make fun of it. They have terms for it. They think you're weird, right? But all of you have developed a lifestyle that I feel, and again, sorry about this sun, I've just got the sun blaring in my face here, but you've created a lifestyle and an attitude towards life where you're all impeccable human beings, leading great lives and leading a life of service, really giving to people, really contributing. Each day you get up, one of the questions you ask is, who can I help today? And, you're all getting paid in direct proportion to the amount of people you've helped. But I do think that this idea about people's mindset stepping into a side hustle, if they want to create any kind of choice in their life, it is work. And, we hear of people who win the lottery, but they're often broke or broker a year later because they haven't grown into their money. And, one of my favorite sayings is, my wealth can only grow to the extent I grow myself. But just talk a little bit about, the work aspect of it, about, treating your side hustle like a real profession versus like a hobby. Who wants to jump in on this one?
You can jump in straight up if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's this old saying, it used to annoy me until I just surrendered to it. But it was, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I was like, there's no way that could be true. Like, I do this really well and that not so well. But I think it's about the attitude you take into stuff. And so, for example, I look back at when I won my first bodybuilding competition, and the way I approached that was to go into it to win. And what that took was the extra mile. And it was like working out twice a day, eating properly for 16 weeks and paying the price, really going for it. And I applied that kind of winning formula to learning about finance. I applied that winning formula recently to winning my first boxing match. I remember, to win that match, it was 12 weeks of grueling stair runs and hill runs and 6K runs and sparring against, getting punched in there. There was a lot of moments where it required doing challenging things over and over and over again to develop it. And so I think if I apply that type of work ethic to our side hustle, it's that of mastery. I wanted to win the bodybuilding comp. I wanted to win the boxing match. I wanted to win or master the side hustle. And I guess it's just understanding that the obstacle is the way. So if you're going to start a side hustle and it seems really challenging, it's supposed to be. That's the whole idea. Like, when I haven't climbed that many mountains, as many as Dave anyway, but I can assure you, he'll tell you too, that when he climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, the challenge of getting up there was what made the view at the top sweeter. So if you're looking for this sweet life, there has to be challenge. And so when you're going into the side hustle, expect there to be challenge, even ask for it, kind of thing. It'll come in different ways you don't want it to come to. But when you're abutting against it, it's supposed to be that way. I remember a mutual friend, Sharon, we said, it's quite challenging to get up to this 7 figures. She's like, I really expect it to be. I'd be very worried if it wasn't. And it's one of those moments of a wake-up call, like, yeah, this is supposed to be challenging. So embrace the sucky parts, embrace the challenge, embrace the work. And when you do pick up the shovel to go to work, try and enjoy it. And eventually it'll become so habitual and so natural to you, like driving a car, that it'll feel like what Sean said before. It won't feel like work. And that's when you've kind of you're on this path to mastery. So I think that's how you should approach the work.
I just want to touch before you guys will jump in. I do love when you pick up the shovel, enjoy it. Because I can say, I love that saying, how you do anything, how you do everything. And normally I can watch someone do one thing and you can see how their whole financial life is going to look just by how they approach one thing. But the idea of, even if you're listening right now and you're in a job you dislike, just showing up with you've got to have that job for the time being, or you could leave if you wanted to, but to embrace it and to show up with the best attitude and just be the best at it versus dragging your sorry ass to work, wishing you didn't have the job, not giving everything. Because I think that energetically, when we show up and we bring this energy, great things start to happen. We start to attract great people. We start to attract opportunities, right? Sean, you want to jump in on this one with the whole work ethic? Because I know it's really you.
I do. And, it's funny because I don't want to come off arrogant with a quote of my own, but it's something that really resonates with me here. And I may even get it wrong, but it's that idea of doing today what others won't, so that tomorrow you can do what others can't. And that, to me, the thing about this in this industry is that the opportunity it's an equal playing field. The opportunity is for everybody. It's just, there's a small percentage that will do what's required. And I remember there being times, and David, you know my story intimately, but working 80 hours as a corporate executive, a week, but finding 1 to 2 hours a day on top of that to work the side business. I remember falling asleep in my hotel as I was traveling away from my family, falling asleep with a phone in my hand, because I had finished my calls, called my wife, and I'd fall asleep with the phone in my hand at like midnight or something. It's just those were the little things. That's just my story. It's not everybody's story, but it required things. And I think the thing that drove me the most was something that's come up in this call, and it'll probably take a life of its own in the next calls, but it's the understanding from Kiyosaki's book, the Rich Dad Poor Dad thing, where I knew I needed to move. So I needed to change. I need to build something on the side that I didn't have. And the other understanding that I had is that I knew I wasn't skilled in the arena that I was taking on with my side hustle. So I knew I needed to grow that muscle, even though I had gone to university. I had been a high school teacher. I was a sales professional. I had all these different things. But each time I took on a new project, I had to get mastery in that thing. So it took time. So like Andrew had said, we gave ourselves, subconsciously, we gave ourselves at least 5 years, because we knew that, I got a degree in 5 years. 6 actually. So, I knew it took some time and commitment to learn a trade. So I wasn't looking for freedom in a moment, in 6 months, in a week, and that's what's happening in today's society, is that we're so built on what I call the coin operated mentality, where you plug a quarter in, you get a 25 cents worth of movement, right? That's how we get motivated. But really, when in the context of the conversation we're having today, it's the long money. It's the money that'll pay us residually. And it takes time. Courtney talked about the penny doubling. It takes time. Day 20, whatever, it's not a whole lot of money. And you can think, will this effort ever pay off? But it will. It will for the percentage of people who just do the little things every day, who do some things that maybe others think are crazy, because they're riding the jet ski thinking, what is Lloyd doing? Why isn't he out here? Why is he reading that stupid book? And it's just, the masses don't understand, but it's available to the masses. And I really look at it as my job to be able to educate people that it is possible. Because I remember as a school teacher, it wasn't possible for me in that moment to do the other things that we learned in Millionaire Mind Intensive, which is invest in stocks or invest in real estate or invest in all these things that isn't network marketing. The only thing I could afford to do was network marketing. And I knew that I had the effort level, the blood, sweat, and tears it took, and the faith that, just like a penny doubling, I knew that a penny doubling after 30 days is going to be an enormous amount of money. I knew that effort multiplied over time will be an enormous amount of money. And, there's 4 of us, and yourself included, it's just so many great examples of people that just put in that effort, over time, and it creates something really extraordinary. So that would be the piece that I'd really say.
I'm going to come to you, Andrew, because I want to finish with Courtney on this particular call. But what do you want to jump in with this one? Because I know you've...
Yeah, so many great points so far. And I think Lloyd sort of said, the obstacle is the way, the challenge is the way, but the challenge is also the opportunity. And I think that's something we need to embrace. It's why run a marathon? Because most people won't. Running a marathon, climbing a mountain, it's meant to be hard. But that's why there's the prestige of finishing it, because you went out and did something hard, because so many people are going to start something and quit. And so to me, there's that, you see people join network marketing and it's almost like they think they've joined a charity and they're like, well, I've found it. David, I've found this thing. And they think, well, now I'm just now the company is just going to pay me because I found it. Well, you found this amazing vehicle, no doubt about that, but understand that there will be challenges every day, but that's the opportunity to put yourself above the rest. And that's your opportunity to get yourself off the traditional path. And that's your opportunity to put yourself up into the top income earners of your company, because you're the one that's going to embrace the challenge, because you know that that's what it. And in my physio career, I worked with athletes. They don't like going to the gym as much as we all don't like going to the gym at 5 a.m, but they love to win gold medals. And they just know that that is the challenge that goes with the goal that they have. And that's the opportunity they have to keep going to the gym so they can win the gold medal. The other thing I would just say is the greatest thing, Sean said it before, is the greatest thing is we're told, like, get a business, buy property, buy stocks. You normally need a lot of money, multiple 5, 6 figures to start. And again, unless you really know what you're doing, and then to really know what you're doing, you've got to study it for like 10 years to really know how to do it for less. So this network marketing opportunity allows you to get in for like $1,000, which is the greatest thing about it. But then people come along and they're like, I've got this network marketing business, but they don't really understand that business means that it's not only about showing up every day yourself, but there are people looking to you every day as to what to do. And so I know when I had my physio business, my staff relied on me to create a business that at least broke even and profited. We had to profit each week so that I could afford to keep the doors open next week. And that's what I love, that challenge of business. I love that. So I've taken from day one, well, I dabbled for a little bit. And then once I kind of clicked and Sean set me straight and I started taking this thing seriously, was understanding that how I show up every day is going to make sure that Lloyd and Alicia can be successful. Now they are amazing unicorns in this industry of their work ethic and that, but I know that I've still got to show up every day. If our business isn't strong and growing, that means there's so many other people in our business who are suffering. And I want to make sure that they all have the best opportunity for success. And that comes back to me. So if we're going to say that we've joined a network marketing company and we're building a business and we're building this great thing for our future, we're going to make sure that we also show up every day as a business owner, not a charity recipient. And if you just take on that, you know what, it's hard, but it's meant to be. And the fact that it's hard means if I go the extra mile, if I create the habit, if I show up every day, grow myself, read the books, surround myself with great people, and say, when you have those negative friends, get a better circle around you. Surround yourself with great people.
New friends.
Sorry?
Get new friends.
Yeah. Like find a different circle of people to hang around, and then you can separate yourself from the pack because you've understood that the opportunity is in your hands because you can do what most people won't. So that would be my biggest recommendation.
Awesome. Courtney, I thought I'd leave you to last, and thank you, everyone. I'm looking forward to our next session. We're all going to come to that session with topics that we want to talk about. And again, I see this more of a roundtable where we can sort of talk to each other about these things and other people can sort of listen in. But Courtney, the money you've made from your side hustle, again, you don't use. And how long have you been in your side hustle business now? 12 years, 10 years?
Well, I started taking the products 10 years ago. Like 5 days ago was my 10-year iceversary.
Exactly. So 10 years. The thing that I didn't want to end on just the hard work part, because I want people to understand it is work, and anything, if you want to have it, if you want to have the lives that we all lead, then there's a work component. But the thing you have, Courtney, is consistency. And I just want to sort of end with the consistency conversation is that everyone I know, especially with the arena of money, is this ability to be consistent. Can you talk a little bit about consistency and how to develop that?
Sure. I loved all the shares. And when Lloyd and Sean and Andrew were all talking, all I could keep thinking of was that iceberg analogy, and that people only see the top part, right? Which is the success, but underneath is the big part of the iceberg, which is what you guys all talked about, the challenge and the opportunity and the consistency. So with this business, really, deciding that it's a business and deciding on what your actions are going to be or what your commitment is, whether it's a set actions per day or a set amount of time per day, but be clear that the amount of time you spend makes no difference. You have to actually be doing something. And then finding an accountability partner or a mentor or someone to link arms with, because we will let ourselves down, right? And so just like Lloyd with working out, or an athlete, having that coach, right? And so just deciding on that. And the beauty of this business is that, yes, people can come in and they can just go gangbusters and skyrocket. But you can also do what I did and just kind of go a little slower. And it wasn't always that way. Again, it's like any business, there's ups and downs. But once I kind of got it and saw the power of this, I was already a mother. And so I didn't have oodles of time to spend on this, but I chose, and I've watched members in my team do the same thing. They were working full time, but they chose to add on that extra hour each day and work during that hour, not just sit on the computer. But just, it can be a little bit. It's just like the money, right? It doesn't really have to be a lot. It's creating that habit, right? So whether it's $5 or whether it's an hour or 15 minutes, you can make it super productive. But the consistency is what's going to pay off more. And just like that penny doubling over time, like Sean said, at day 20, it doesn't maybe feel like anything's happening or nobody's listening or paying attention. And just like training for something, you might not see a lot of gains. And there's going to be that tipping point. And so, it's speaking to so many things we already spoke to today, is like from both sides, create that goal, have that drive, know where you're at, know what you need to do, and link arms, find new friends, find a mentor, get people on your team, because, it's easy to kind of then just, not tonight. So having a mentor for me, David, was, transformational in my life.
Remember the CD when
Oh yeah.
a quick story. So she was in, we had a sales company, and so I went in the studio and recorded her a CD that she'd listen to every day, and it would just be like mindset around selling, right? And every time she got a sale, she had this little pig, and it would be like, I listened. So every time she got a sale, she just phoned my phone, and I'd hear this squealing little pig on there, and I'd know that she got a sale, right? But it was just like, but it was just that thing, right? Sort of starting out, we were just sort of hustling. But listen, thank you so much, Lloyd, Andrew, Sean, and Courtney. This has been invaluable. I really look forward to the continued conversation and us getting together on a regular basis and really sort of exploring some of these. I think it's a wonderful group. I've learned a lot as usual. Great teachers are normally great students, and I think we're all both students and teachers. But are you listening? Just to bear in mind, it's we're talking about those. My extra mile, your extra mile, those little tiny things we can do consistently over time. This isn't about taking on the whole world. It's about making those small changes, those small adaptations, those small things that you can have control on that will allow you to have the things you truly want. So with that being said, we'll see you soon. And guys, thank you.